Marcus Chen floated in the observation deck of the massive alien ship, watching the purple-tinged nebula drift past the reinforced viewing ports. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Hunting Federation had reluctantly accepted Earth's application to join their ancient organization. 3 months since humanity had been granted the lowest possible classification in their database. The other species barely acknowledged his presence. To them, humans were nothing more than curious primitives who had somehow stumbled into faster-than-light travel. The Zalarians, with their crystalline exoskeletons and razor-sharp claws, dominated most hunting competitions. The Vorthak, massive bear-like creatures standing 12 feet tall, specialized in tracking the most dangerous prey across entire star systems. The sleek, serpentine Nyx could phase through solid matter, making them nearly impossible to escape once they locked onto a target. Marcus was the only human aboard the Federation flagship, Eternal Pursuit. Earth had sent their best tracker, their most experienced hunter. But even he felt like a child among giants. At 5 feet 10 inches and weighing barely 200 pounds, he looked fragile compared to his alien counterparts. His brown hair and unremarkable features drew no attention, which suited him fine. He had learned long ago that being underestimated could be an advantage. "Attention all hunters," the ship's artificial intelligence announced in the common trade language. "We are approaching the Kepler 442 system. The Great Hunt will commence in 6 standard hours." Marcus felt his heart rate increase slightly. The Great Hunt happened only once every galactic year, and this would be humanity's first participation. The rules were simple but brutal. 100 of the galaxy's most skilled hunters would be dropped onto the surface of Kepler 442b, a planet known for its incredibly dangerous ecosystem. Their target was the legendary Shadow Stalker, a creature that had eluded capture for over 3 centuries. The Shadow Stalker was said to be intelligent, adaptable, and utterly lethal. It could change its molecular structure to become nearly invisible, possessed strength that could crush starship hulls, and had killed more hunters than any other creature in the known galaxy. The Federation had declared it the ultimate prize. Whoever brought back proof of its death would be granted the title of Supreme Hunter and command of their own battle fleet. Marcus made his way to the equipment bay, where hunters were selecting their gear. The Zalarians chose plasma rifles that could melt through solid rock. The Vorthak selected massive kinetic weapons designed to bring down creatures the size of buildings. The Nyx picked energy weapons that could fire through multiple dimensions. When Marcus approached the human equipment section, several alien hunters stopped their conversations to watch. He ignored their stares and examined the gear Earth had provided. Standard military rifle, basic survival equipment, a small medical kit, and a hunting knife his grandfather had given him years ago. The aliens began laughing when they saw his selection. "That primitive is going to hunt the Shadow Stalker with a metal blade?" One Zalarian clicked in amusement. "Perhaps he plans to throw rocks at it," a Vorthak rumbled. Marcus said nothing. He had learned patience during his years, tracking elk through the mountains of Colorado, following deer through the dense forests of Michigan, and hunting everything from rabbits to bears across North America. His grandfather, a veteran tracker from the Blackfeet Nation, had taught him that the best hunters were not always the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who understood their prey, who could think like them, and who never gave up once they started a hunt. The briefing hall filled with hunters as the Federation's hunt master, an ancient Vorthak named Gorvak, began explaining the mission parameters. Kepler 442b was a world of endless forests, deep caverns, and treacherous swamplands. The atmosphere was breathable for most species, but the planet's gravity was 30% higher than Earth normal. The Shadow Stalker had been spotted in the northern continent, in a region called the Glass Valley. "The creature has adapted to every hunting strategy we have employed over the centuries," Gorvak explained. "It learns from each encounter and becomes more dangerous. 17 hunting parties have failed to return from their attempts to kill it. The bodies we recovered showed evidence of incredible intelligence in the creature's attack patterns." Marcus studied the holographic displays showing the planet's surface. The Glass Valley was surrounded by crystalline formations that could interfere with most scanning equipment. The forests were thick enough to hide an army, and the swamplands were filled with predators almost as dangerous as their target. It was the perfect hunting ground for something that didn't want to be found. Each hunter will be equipped with the emergency beacon, Gorvak continued. If activated, you will be extracted immediately, but you will forfeit all rights to the prize. The huntmaster strongly recommends working in groups, as solitary hunters have the highest casualty rate. As the briefing ended, hunters began forming teams. The Zalarians grouped with other Zalarians. The Vorthak formed their traditional pack hunting units, and the Nyx created their phase hunting circles. Marcus waited, hoping someone would invite him to join their team, but none of the alien hunters even looked in his direction. He was going to hunt alone. 6 hours later, the transport ships began their descent toward Kepler 442b. Marcus found himself squeezed into a landing craft filled with a mixed hunting party of Zalarians and Vorthak. They spoke in their native languages, completely ignoring his presence. Through the viewport, he watched the planet's surface grow larger. Endless green forests stretched to the horizon, broken by silver rivers and the distinctive crystalline formations of the Glass Valley. The landing was rough. The thick atmosphere and high gravity made atmospheric entry more challenging than expected. When the transport doors opened, Marcus immediately noticed the difference in air pressure and weight. Every step felt like he was carrying an extra 60 pounds. But his years of hiking in the mountains had prepared him for difficult terrain. The other hunters quickly organized and moved out in their predetermined groups. Within minutes, Marcus found himself alone at the landing site. He checked his equipment one final time, shouldered his pack, and began walking toward the Glass Valley. The hunt had officially begun. The forest was unlike anything on Earth. The trees grew to incredible heights, their canopies so thick they blocked most sunlight from reaching the ground. Strange calls echoed through the darkness between the massive trunks. Marcus could hear the movement of creatures in the undergrowth, but none showed themselves. He maintained a steady pace, conserving energy for the long hunt ahead. Hours passed as he made his way through the alien wilderness. His grandfather's lessons echoed in his mind. Move like the forest. Think like your prey. And never assume you are the only hunter in the woods. The advice had served him well on Earth, and he hoped it would prove valuable here. As the day progressed, Marcus began to notice signs that other hunters had passed through the area. Broken branches where Vorthak had forced their way through the undergrowth, scorch marks on trees where Zalarians had tested their weapons, and the strange shimmer in the air that indicated Nyx had phased through solid objects. But he also noticed something else. Subtle disturbances in the forest floor, marks that looked almost like they had been deliberately placed to confuse trackers. Branches that had been carefully arranged to hide tracks, and an overall sense that something intelligent was watching the hunters, learning their patterns. The Shadow Stalker was already studying its new prey. As darkness fell, Marcus made camp in a small clearing surrounded by dense undergrowth. He did not light a fire, instead eating cold rations and drinking water from his recycling system. The night sounds of the alien forest were unsettling. But he forced himself to rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and he would need all his strength. Sometime during the night, he was awakened by the sound of plasma fire in the distance. The bright flashes illuminated the forest canopy for several seconds before fading back to darkness. Then came the screaming. High-pitched alien voices crying out in what sounded like terror and pain. Marcus grabbed his rifle and moved to the edge of his camp. The sounds continued for several minutes before suddenly cutting off, leaving the forest in ominous silence. He waited for over an hour, listening for any sign of survivors or approaching danger, but heard nothing. The Shadow Stalker had claimed its first victims of the Great Hunt. When morning came, Marcus broke camp and continued toward the Glass Valley. The terrain became more challenging as he climbed into the foothills surrounding the crystalline formations. The rocks here were sharp and unstable, making each step treacherous. But he also noticed that the disturbances in the environment were becoming more frequent and more obvious. Someone or something was deliberately leaving a trail. By midday, he reached the edge of the Glass Valley. The crystalline formations rose hundreds of feet into the air, creating a maze of reflecting surfaces that played tricks with light and shadow. His communications equipment immediately began experiencing interference, and his scanner showed nothing but static. Marcus stood at the valley entrance for several minutes, studying the terrain ahead. Every instinct told him this was a trap. The trail leading into the valley was too obvious, too easy to follow, but it was also the only lead he had found since beginning the hunt. He checked his weapons one final time and entered the glass valley. The crystalline walls towered above him, creating an echo chamber that amplified every sound. His footsteps seemed impossibly loud, and he could hear his own breathing reflected back from multiple directions. The trail continued deeper into the maze. Marcus followed carefully, noting that the path always led away from dead ends and toward passages that continued deeper into the valley. Whatever was leaving this trail knew the area intimately. After an hour of careful progress, he reached a large clearing in the center of the crystal formation. The space was roughly circular, about 50 meters across, with walls of solid crystal rising on all sides. In the center of the clearing lay the scattered remains of several alien hunters. Marcus approached the bodies cautiously. The Zalarians' crystalline exoskeletons were cracked and shattered. The Vorthak's massive forms showed signs of incredible impact trauma. All of them had been killed by something with tremendous strength and surgical precision. But what disturbed Marcus most was the arrangement of the bodies. They had been placed in a specific pattern, almost like a message. And scattered among the remains were pieces of their hunting equipment, carefully arranged to catch the light from the crystal walls. This was not just a kill site, it was a display. A sound echoed through the clearing, unlike anything Marcus had heard before. It was part growl, part whistle, and part something that seemed to come from no living creature. The sound bounced off the crystal walls, making it impossible to determine its source. Marcus raised his rifle and turned in a slow circle, scanning the crystal walls above the clearing. Nothing moved, but he could feel eyes watching him. The sensation was so strong it made his skin crawl. Then he saw it. High up on the crystal wall, barely visible in the shifting light, was a shape that didn't quite belong. It was roughly humanoid, but wrong in ways that made his mind struggle to focus on it. The creature seemed to blur at the edges, as if it existed only partially in normal space. The shadow stalker had found him. For several heartbeats, hunter and prey studied each other across the crystal clearing. Marcus kept his rifle trained on the figure, but he could tell it was preparing to move. Every muscle in the creature's form radiated lethal intent. When it attacked, it moved faster than anything Marcus had ever seen. The creature launched itself from the crystal wall with impossible speed, becoming a blur of motion as it descended toward him. Marcus dove to the side, feeling the displacement of air as something massive passed through the space he had just occupied. He rolled behind the body of a fallen Vorthak and brought his rifle up, but the clearing appeared empty again. The shadow stalker had vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Marcus controlled his breathing and listened for any sign of movement. The silence stretched on, broken only by the occasional echo from deeper in the crystal maze. He knew the creature was still there, somewhere in the clearing, but his eyes could not track it. The hunt had become a deadly game of patience, and Marcus was determined not to be the next trophy in the shadow stalker's collection. Minutes passed like hours as he waited behind cover. Then he heard the subtle scrape of claws against crystal. Somewhere behind him, and to the left, Marcus spun around, finger on the trigger, but saw nothing except empty air and reflected light. The creature was playing with him, testing his reactions and learning his capabilities. Marcus realized that every previous hunter had probably gone through this same experience in their final moments. The shadow stalker was not just intelligent, it was sadistic. But Marcus had one advantage the other hunters had not possessed. He was human, and humans had spent millions of years as both predator and prey. His ancestors had survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and more stubborn than anything else on their planet. He was going to make this creature work for its kill. Marcus began moving carefully around the clearing, using the fallen hunters' bodies as cover while keeping his rifle ready. He was not trying to escape. He was changing the rules of engagement. Instead of waiting for the creature to attack, he was going to force it to react to his movements. The strategy worked. Within minutes, he caught a glimpse of motion near the crystal wall. The shadow stalker was repositioning itself, trying to maintain its tactical advantage, but in moving, it had revealed its approximate location. Marcus did something unexpected. Instead of shooting or running, He began to speak. "I can see you," he said in a calm, steady voice. "You are fast and strong, but you are not invisible. You hunt by making your prey afraid. But I have been afraid before, and I am still here." The creature's response was immediate and violent. It materialized directly in front of him, fully visible for the first time. The shadow stalker stood nearly 8 feet tall, with a body that seemed to shift between solid matter and something else entirely. Its limbs were too long, its joints bent in impossible directions, and its face was a nightmare of teeth and glowing eyes. But Marcus did not flinch. He looked directly into those alien eyes and saw something that surprised him. Intelligence, yes, but also curiosity. The creature had never encountered prey that spoke to it before. "You collect trophies," Marcus continued, gesturing toward the arranged bodies. "You are proud of your kills. But pride can be a weakness." The shadow stalker tilted its head, studying this strange human who showed no fear. It made that haunting sound again, but softer this time. Almost questioning, Marcus slowly lowered his rifle, though he kept his finger near the trigger. "You want to know why I am different from the others? Why I do not run or beg or try to hide?" The creature took a step closer, its form becoming more solid as it focused its attention on Marcus. This was the moment of truth. Either his gambit would work, or he would join the other hunters in death. "Because," Marcus said quietly, "I understand what you are. You are not just a hunter. You are the last of your kind." The shadow stalker froze at Marcus's words. The creature's shifting form stabilized, becoming fully solid for the first time since the encounter began. The glowing eyes that had seemed so alien moments before now held something Marcus recognized. Loneliness. "You have been alone for centuries," Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the incredible danger he faced. "The Federation records say you have been hunted for 300 years. But they never asked why you stayed in one place, why you never left this valley. You could travel anywhere in the galaxy with your abilities. But you remain here." The creature made that haunting sound again. But this time, it was softer, almost mournful. It took another step toward Marcus, close enough now that he could see the intricate patterns that ran across its shifting skin. They were not random. They were decorative, artistic, cultural. "This is your home," Marcus realized. "This valley, these crystals, they mean something to your people. And you are the guardian of something sacred." The shadow stalker's head tilted further, studying this human who spoke of things no other hunter had ever considered. For 3 centuries, beings had come to this valley seeking to kill it for sport and glory. None had shown interest in understanding what it was, or why it fought so fiercely to protect this place. Marcus slowly set his rifle on the ground and spread his hands wide. "My people have a word: stewardship. It means protecting something important even when others cannot understand its value, even when they try to take it from you." The creature's response was immediate and shocking. It spoke. The words were not in any language Marcus recognized, but somehow he understood their meaning. The shadow stalker was not making random sounds. It was using a complex linguistic system that operated on frequencies and harmonics that bypassed normal hearing and spoke directly to the listener's mind. "You understand," the creature said, the words forming in Marcus's consciousness rather than his ears. "The others see only prey and predator. You see something more." Marcus nodded slowly. "Tell me about your people. Help me understand what you are protecting." The shadow stalker regarded him for a long moment, then gestured toward the crystal walls surrounding the clearing. As it moved, the crystals began to glow with internal light, revealing patterns and symbols carved deep into their surfaces. "We were called the Shaduvar," the creature explained. "We were the first hunters in this region of the galaxy, long before the Federation existed. We hunted not for sport or dominance, but to maintain balance. We were the guardians of the spaces between worlds." The crystal walls continued to brighten, and Marcus could see that the entire valley was covered in carved symbols and artwork. The formations were not natural. They were a vast monument, A city built of living crystal. The Federation species were young when we walked among the stars, the Shadowvar continued. We guided them, taught them the proper ways of the hunt, showed them how to take only what was needed and leave the rest for future generations. Marcus looked around the valley with new eyes. The scattered hunter bodies suddenly made sense. They did not come here just to hunt you. They came to desecrate a sacred site. Yes, the creature's mental voice was heavy with ancient pain. When the younger species grew strong, they forgot the old ways. They began to hunt for pleasure rather than necessity. They took more than they needed and called it progress. When we tried to correct them, they declared us obsolete. The story unfolded in Marcus's mind as the Shadowvar shared its memories. The Federation's ancestor species had turned against their teachers, hunting the Shadowvar across the galaxy. One by one, the ancient guardians had fallen, until only this single survivor remained in the Crystal Valley that had been the heart of their civilization. For 300 years, they have sent their best hunters to prove their superiority by killing me, the Shadowvar explained. Each group that comes believes they will succeed where others failed. They see only a monster to be destroyed, not a guardian protecting the last remnant of an ancient culture. Marcus felt a deep anger building in his chest. The Federation had lied about everything. This was not a simple hunting expedition. It was the final act in a genocide that had been going on for centuries. The crystals, Marcus said, looking around the glowing valley. They are not just monuments. They contain something. The knowledge of my people, the Shadowvar confirmed. Everything we learned about the proper way to hunt, to maintain balance, to be guardians rather than destroyers. The Federation wants that knowledge destroyed because it challenges their current way of life. Marcus understood now why the creature had arranged the bodies of the fallen hunters. It was not cruelty. It was a warning. The Shadowvar was trying to tell any who would listen that this place was defended, that something important lay within the Crystal Valley. But you cannot guard this place forever, Marcus said gently. You are one being against an entire galactic civilization. Eventually, they will send enough hunters to overwhelm even your abilities. The Shadowvar's form flickered with what Marcus interpreted as exhaustion. I know, but I cannot abandon my duty. I am the last keeper of the old ways. When I fall, the knowledge dies with me. Marcus looked around the Crystal City one more time, his mind racing. There had to be another way, some solution that did not end with the destruction of this incredible heritage. Then an idea began to form, dangerous and probably impossible, but potentially brilliant. What if you were not the last? He asked. The Shadowvar's eyes focused intently on Marcus. Explain. What if someone else could learn the old ways? What if the knowledge could be passed to a species that might understand its value? What if someone else could learn the knowledge? What if someone else could be passed to a species? The creature was silent for several minutes, processing this unprecedented suggestion. The knowledge cannot be simply downloaded or transmitted. It requires a deep understanding of the relationship between predator and prey, between guardian and protected. It requires someone who hunts not for dominance but for balance. Marcus smiled grimly. My people have a long history of hunting for survival rather than sport. We understand the concept of taking only what is needed, and we have something else that might be useful. We are very, very stubborn when we believe in something. The Shadowvar studied Marcus with new interest. You would attempt to learn the ways of the Shadowvar? To become a guardian of knowledge that your own species might not accept? Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. If you are willing to teach, I am willing to learn. The creature's form began to shift again, but this time it was not preparation for attack. The Shadowvar was experiencing emotions it had not felt in centuries. Hope. The process is dangerous, the creature warned. The knowledge is vast and complex. Many of my own people failed the training, and if the Federation discovers what you are attempting, they will declare you a traitor to your species. Marcus picked up his rifle and slung it across his shoulder. Then we will have to make sure they do not find out until it is too late to stop us. For the first time in 300 years, The shadow stalker made a sound that could be interpreted as laughter. You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Probably both, Marcus admitted. But I would rather die trying to save something important than live knowing I let it be destroyed. The Shadavar gestured toward one of the crystal walls, and a section slid aside to reveal a passage leading deeper into the valley. Come then, last student of the Shadavar. Let us see if your species has the wisdom to learn from the past. Marcus followed the creature into the crystal passage, leaving behind the bodies of the fallen hunters, and entering a world of knowledge that had been hidden for centuries. The walls glowed with their own inner light, revealing chambers carved with intricate symbols and filled with crystalline structures that hummed with stored information. The first lesson, the Shadavar said as they walked through the ancient corridors, is understanding the difference between hunting and murder. True hunting requires respect for the prey, knowledge of their nature, and acceptance of the responsibility that comes with taking life. Marcus nodded, remembering his grandfather's teachings about honoring the animals they hunted and never taking more than the family needed. My people understand this concept, though many have forgotten it in recent generations. Good. The second lesson is more difficult. Understanding that the hunter and the hunted are part of the same system. Remove too many predators, and the prey overpopulates and destroys its environment. Remove too many prey species, and the predators starve. Balance must be maintained. They entered a vast chamber filled with crystal formations that resembled trees. Each tree pulsed with soft light, and Marcus could sense that they contained vast amounts of information. These are the memory crystals, the Shadavar explained. They contain the collected knowledge of my people spanning millions of years. Hunting techniques, ecological wisdom, meditation practices, and the philosophical foundations of guardianship. Marcus approached one of the crystal trees and placed his hand on its surface. Immediately, his mind was flooded with images and sensations. Alien worlds where massive herds roamed endless plains. Careful culling practices that maintained population balance. Hunters who took only the weak and old, while protecting the young and healthy. But he also saw darker images. The rise of the younger species. Their rejection of Shadavar teachings. The systematic hunting and extermination of his teacher's people. The final desperate fight to protect the last repository of ancient wisdom. The knowledge is overwhelming. Marcus gasped, pulling his hand away from the crystal. Yes, the Shadavar agreed. That is why the training must be gradual. Your mind must be prepared to accept concepts that your species has never encountered. But first, you must survive the immediate challenge. Marcus looked at his teacher in confusion. What challenge? The creature's form became more solid, more defined. The other hunters in the valley are still alive. They have been tracking us since you entered the passages. The Federation's most elite teams do not give up simply because their initial assault failed. As if summoned by the Shadavar's words, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the crystal corridors. Multiple sets of feet. Moving with military precision, the surviving hunters had regrouped and were mounting a coordinated assault on the Crystal City. How many? Marcus asked, checking his weapon. 12 Zalarians, 8 Vorthak, and 6 Nyx, the Shadavar replied after a moment of concentration. They have brought heavy weapons and explosive charges. They intend to collapse the entire valley, rather than allow us to escape. Marcus felt his heart sink. Even with the Shadavar's incredible abilities, those odds were overwhelming. The creature had survived for centuries by fighting individual hunters or small groups, not by facing military assault teams. There is another way, the Shadavar said, reading Marcus's thoughts. But it requires complete trust between us. What do you mean? The creature gestured toward a particular crystal formation at the center of the chamber. The memory crystals can be interfaced directly with a living mind. Instead of learning the knowledge gradually over years, you could absorb it all at once. You would become a true Shadavar guardian, with all the abilities and knowledge of my people. Marcus stared at the crystal formation. What is the cost? Your human identity would be forever changed. You would remain yourself, but you would also become something more. Something that your own species might not recognize or accept. and there is a significant chance that your mind could not survive the integration process. The sound of approaching hunters grew closer. Marcus could hear them calling to each other in their alien languages, coordinating their assault on the Crystal City. Time was running out. "If I do this," Marcus asked, "will I be able to protect this place? Will I be able to preserve your people's knowledge?" "Yes," the Shadivar said simply. "But you will no longer be simply human. You will be something new. A bridge between what my people were and what your people might become." Marcus thought of his grandfather's teachings about responsibility and stewardship. He thought about the incredible knowledge stored in these crystals, wisdom that could revolutionize how intelligent species interacted with their environments. He thought about the Federation's lies and their systematic destruction of anything that challenged their dominance. The decision was easier than he had expected. "How do we begin?" Marcus asked. The Shadivar's eyes glowed brighter with something that might have been pride. "Place both hands on the central crystal and open your mind completely. Do not resist the flow of information, no matter how overwhelming it becomes. Trust in the process and in your own strength." Marcus walked to the crystal formation and placed his palms against its smooth surface. The moment his skin made contact, his world exploded into light and sensation. Information poured into his mind faster than he could process. Hunting techniques for creatures on thousands of worlds, meditation practices that could slow time and enhance perception, philosophical concepts about the relationship between all living things. But there was more than just knowledge. Marcus felt his body beginning to change, his human limitations being gradually overcome. His muscles became denser and stronger. His reflexes increased to superhuman levels, and his senses expanded to perceive wavelengths of light and sound that no human had ever experienced. Through it all, the Shadivar stood guard, its ancient form glowing with power as it prepared to face the incoming assault team. The creature that had spent 3 centuries in isolation was no longer alone. For the first time since the genocide of its people, it had found someone worthy of carrying on the traditions of the Shadivar. The transformation was agony and ecstasy combined. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding to encompass concepts that human language had no words for. He experienced the memories of 100,000 successful hunts, felt the satisfaction of maintaining ecological balance across entire star systems, and understood the deep spiritual connection between guardian and protected. When the process was complete, Marcus opened his eyes and saw the world with entirely new perception. The crystal chamber was alive with energy patterns invisible to normal vision. He could sense the life forces of every creature in the valley, from the massive assault team approaching through the corridors to the smallest insects hiding in the crystal formations. But most importantly, he could feel the presence of the Shadivar beside him, no longer a terrifying alien predator, but a teacher, a mentor, and perhaps even a friend. "The integration is complete," the Shadivar observed with satisfaction. "You are now the first human Shadivar, guardian of the old ways and protector of ancient wisdom." Marcus stood and tested his new capabilities. His body moved with fluid grace, his enhanced muscles responding to his will with precision that would have been impossible moments before. But the physical changes were nothing compared to the mental transformation. He understood now why the Shadivar had fought so fiercely to protect this place. The knowledge contained here was not just information. It was the foundation for a completely different way of understanding the universe. "The hunters are approaching the chamber," Marcus said, his enhanced hearing tracking their movements through the crystal corridors. "What do we do?" The Shadivar smiled, an expression that was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. "Now, my student, we show them what real hunters can accomplish." Marcus and the Shadivar moved through the crystal corridors with perfect synchronization, their enhanced senses tracking the assault team's approach. The transformation had changed more than just Marcus's physical capabilities. It had created a mental link between the two guardians that allowed them to coordinate without spoken communication. The attacking hunters had split into 3 groups. The Zilarians were advancing through the main passage, their plasma weapons charged and ready. The massive Vorthak were forcing their way through the side tunnels, using their strength to smash through crystal barriers. The Nyx had disappeared entirely. using their phase-shifting abilities to move through the solid crystal walls themselves. They intend to trap us in the central chamber, the Shaduvar's mental voice informed Marcus. Standard Federation assault doctrine. Overwhelming force applied from multiple directions. Marcus nodded, studying the tactical situation with his enhanced awareness. His new knowledge included centuries of Shaduvar combat experience, and he could see weaknesses in the Federation's approach that would have been invisible to his human perception. They are thinking like conquerors, not like hunters, Marcus replied through their mental link. They see the Crystal City as an obstacle to overcome, not as a living environment to understand. The two guardians reached a junction where the main passage split into 5 different corridors. Marcus could sense the approaching hunters in 3 of those passages, while the other 2 led deeper into the Crystal City's heart. The memory crystals must be protected, the Shaduvar said. If they use explosive charges in the central chamber, thousands of years of knowledge could be destroyed. Marcus felt a cold fury building in his chest. The Federation hunters were not just trying to kill him and his teacher. They were preparing to commit cultural genocide, destroying the last remnants of an entire civilization for the sake of their pride. Then we stop them here, Marcus said, his hand moving to the hunting knife his grandfather had given him years ago. The weapon had been transformed during his integration with the crystal, becoming something that existed partially in normal space and partially in the dimensional realm where the Shaduvar could phase shift. The Shaduvar's eyes glowed with approval. You begin to understand the true nature of guardianship. We protect not just with strength, but with wisdom and determination. The first group of Zilarians appeared at the far end of the main passage, their crystalline forms glittering in the soft light of the crystal walls. They moved in perfect military formation, weapons trained forward, scanning for targets. Their leader, a massive specimen with blade-like appendages extending from his arms, raised his hand to signal a halt when he spotted Marcus and the Shaduvar waiting at the junction. Surrender immediately, the Zilarian commander called out in the common trade language. You are outnumbered and outgunned. The Federation offers clemency to those who cooperate with lawful hunting operations. Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity of the statement. These creatures had spent 300 years trying to murder the last survivor of an ancient civilization, and now they spoke of law and clemency. The only law here, Marcus called back, is the law of guardianship. You are trespassing on sacred ground, and you will be removed. The Zilarian commander's response was immediate. He raised his plasma rifle and fired a bolt of superheated energy directly at Marcus. The shot would have vaporized a normal human instantly. But Marcus was no longer entirely human. The Shaduvar techniques flowed through his mind as naturally as breathing. Marcus phase-shifted at the last moment, allowing the plasma bolt to pass harmlessly through his body. Before the Zilarians could react, he materialized behind their formation and struck with his transformed hunting knife. The blade passed through the commander's crystalline armor as if it were made of paper, finding the vital nerve cluster at the base of his skull. The massive Zilarian dropped without a sound, his nervous system disrupted by the knife's dimensional properties. The remaining Zilarians spun around in confusion, trying to target an enemy who could become incorporeal at will. But the Shaduvar was already among them, moving with lethal grace through their formation. The ancient guardian's claws tore through their armor with surgical precision, disabling rather than killing when possible. In less than 30 seconds, the entire Zilarian assault team was neutralized. Marcus and the Shaduvar stood among the fallen hunters, not even breathing heavily from their exertions. The Vorthak are almost through the side passages, the Shaduvar warned. They have explosive charges. Marcus could hear the massive bear-like creatures smashing through crystal barriers, their roars echoing through the corridors. Unlike the Zilarians' disciplined military approach, the Vorthak favored brute force tactics. They would charge straight into the chamber and try to overwhelm their targets with sheer power. Let them come, Marcus said, his new confidence surprising even himself. They understand only strength. We will show them what real strength looks like. The two guardians positioned themselves at the entrance to the side passages, waiting for the Vorthak assault. When it came, it was like facing a natural disaster. 8 massive forms burst through the crystal barriers simultaneously, their roars shaking the entire chamber. Each Vorthak stood 12 feet tall and weighed over a ton, armed with kinetic weapons designed to punch through starship armor. But size and strength meant nothing if they could not hit their targets. Marcus and the Shadavar moved like dancers, flowing around the Vorthak attacks with impossible grace. The bear's massive weapons shattered crystal formations and left deep gouges in the walls, but never came close to touching the Guardians. Marcus discovered that his transformed knife could disrupt the Vorthak nervous systems just as effectively as it had worked on the Zalarians. Each strike left one of the massive creatures paralyzed but alive, dropping to the crystal floor with thunderous impacts. The last Vorthak, seeing his entire pack disabled in moments, made a desperate decision. He armed the explosive charges he carried and prepared to detonate them in the chamber, choosing mutual destruction over defeat. "No!" Marcus shouted, but he was too far away to intervene. The Shadavar, however, was not. The ancient guardian materialized directly in front of the Vorthak and placed both hands on the creature's massive chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus felt a wave of mental energy flow through their link, as the Shadavar did something he had never seen before. The Vorthak's eyes widened in shock as the Shadavar's consciousness briefly merged with his own. In that instant of contact, the massive hunter experienced 3 centuries of loneliness, loss, and desperate guardianship. He felt the weight of being the last survivor of his people, the responsibility of protecting knowledge that could benefit the entire galaxy, and the pain of being hunted by those who should have been students. When the contact broke, the Vorthak carefully deactivated his explosive charges and set them aside. He looked at Marcus and the Shadavar with new understanding, then slowly knelt in a gesture of submission and respect. "I did not know," the massive hunter said quietly. "The Federation told us you were a mindless killer. They never said you were a guardian." "The Federation has forgotten the difference," the Shadavar replied gently. "Perhaps it is time they were reminded." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the crystal formations. The Vorthak assault team was neutralized, and the Zalarians were disabled but alive. That left only the Nyx phase hunters, the most dangerous opponents of all. Marcus reached out with his enhanced senses, trying to locate the shape-shifting assassins. The Nyx could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to track with conventional methods. But Marcus was no longer using conventional methods. The Shadavar knowledge included techniques for sensing dimensional disturbances, and Marcus applied those lessons now. Gradually, he began to perceive the subtle ripples in spacetime that indicated Nyx movement through the crystal walls. 6 of them, he reported to the Shadavar. They are positioning themselves for a coordinated strike. 3 from above, 2 from the sides, 1 from below. Nyx assassins prefer to strike from concealment and escape before retaliation is possible, the Shadavar explained. But they have never faced opponents who could follow them into phase space. Marcus smiled grimly. His transformed state included the ability to shift between dimensions, just as the Shadavar could. For the first time in their history, the Nyx would face enemies who could match their primary advantage. The attack came without warning. 6 serpentine forms materialized in the chamber simultaneously, their dimensional weapons charging with lethal energy. But Marcus and the Shadavar were ready. The 2 guardians phase-shifted the instant the Nyx appeared, vanishing from normal space and reappearing in the dimensional realm where the assassins thought they were safe. The battle that followed took place partially in normal reality and partially in the strange twilight space between dimensions. Marcus found himself fighting opponents who moved like liquid shadow, their forms constantly shifting between solid matter and pure energy. His hunting knife proved devastatingly effective against their dimensional armor, but the Nyx were skilled fighters who had never lost a confrontation in phase space. The combat was unlike anything Marcus had experienced, even with his enhanced capabilities. The Nyx could stretch their bodies into impossible shapes, attack from multiple angles simultaneously, and disappear into dimensional pockets that seemed to exist outside normal spacetime. But the Shadavar knowledge included 300 years of combat experience against every type of enemy the galaxy could produce. Marcus drew on that vast store of tactical wisdom, adapting ancient techniques to counter the Nyx advantages. The key was understanding that the Nyx thought in 3 dimensions while the Shaduvar techniques operated in 5. Marcus began attacking his opponents not just in space, but in time, using brief phase shifts to arrive at his target's location before they had finished moving there. One by one, the Nyx assassins fell to his transformed hunting knife. Their dimensional weapons were useless against an opponent who could predict their attacks and counter them before they were even launched. The final Nyx, seeing his entire team defeated, made one last desperate attempt. He phase-shifted completely out of normal reality, disappearing into the deep dimensional spaces that existed between galaxies. It was a suicide move. Even the Nyx could not survive in those realms for more than a few minutes, but Marcus followed him. The journey through deep phase space was indescribable. Marcus found himself in a realm where the normal rules of physics had no meaning, where thought and reality blended together in impossible combinations. The fleeing Nyx was barely visible ahead of him, a fading shadow desperately trying to escape to normal space. Marcus caught up with the assassin at the very edge of dimensional collapse. In that strange twilight realm, he did something unexpected. Instead of striking with his knife, he reached out with his consciousness and touched the Nyx's mind. The contact was brief, but profound. The assassin experienced the same revelation that had affected the Vorthak, an understanding of what the Shaduvar truly represented, and what the Federation was trying to destroy. When they both materialized back in the crystal chamber, the Nyx knelt beside the Vorthak in the same gesture of submission and respect. "The Federation has lied to us all," the Nyx said quietly. "This is not a hunting preserve. This is a library." Marcus looked around the chamber at the surviving hunters. The assault team had been neutralized, but not destroyed. Instead of corpses, he and the Shaduvar had created potential allies, beings who now understood the truth about the Crystal Valley and its guardian. "What happens now?" the Vorthak asked. "The Federation will send another assault team when this one fails to report." The Shaduvar moved to the center of the chamber and gestured toward the memory crystals. "Now we do something that has not been attempted in 300 years. We teach." Marcus felt a surge of excitement through their mental link. His teacher was proposing something revolutionary. Instead of hiding the Shaduvar knowledge, they would share it. The Crystal Valley would become what it was always meant to be: a school for guardians. "The Federation will not allow it," one of the Zilarians said, struggling to sit up despite his paralyzed limbs. "They will send battle fleets to destroy this place, rather than lose their monopoly on hunting rights. Then we will have to convince them that some things are more valuable than political control," Marcus replied. "And we will have help." He was thinking of Earth, of his grandfather's people, and their understanding of stewardship. Humanity had spent centuries learning hard lessons about the consequences of taking too much and giving back too little. They might be the perfect species to appreciate Shaduvar wisdom. The memory crystals contain knowledge about ecological balance that could revolutionize how we manage inhabited worlds, Marcus continued. Hunting techniques that could eliminate the need for destructive military actions. Meditation practices that could extend lifespans and improve mental health across all species. The Shaduvar's eyes glowed with something Marcus had never seen before: hope for the future rather than just determination to preserve the past. "You propose to challenge the entire galactic order," the ancient guardian said. "Yes," Marcus replied simply. "My species has a talent for challenging established authority when we believe in something strongly enough." The surviving assault team members looked at each other uncertainly. They had come to the Crystal Valley as hunters seeking a trophy. Now they found themselves potential students in a school that could reshape galactic civilization. "What would you have us do?" the Vorthak asked. Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of his new responsibilities settling around him like a comfortable cloak. "Help us spread the word. Return to your people and tell them what you have learned. The Federation has kept the truth about this place secret for 3 centuries. It is time that secret was revealed." The Shaduvar moved to one of the memory crystals and placed a hand on its surface. The entire chamber began to glow with soft, pulsing light as the ancient knowledge awakened from its long slumber. "The teaching begins now," the Guardian announced. "Those who wish to learn the old ways are welcome. Those who seek only dominance should leave while they still can. Marcus felt the power flowing through the crystal formations, awakening systems that had been dormant since the last Shadowvar died 300 years ago. The valley was coming alive again, preparing to fulfill its original purpose as a center of learning and wisdom. But he also felt something else through his enhanced senses: ships approaching the system. The Federation had not waited for the assault team's report. They were sending a battle fleet to end the threat once and for all. "We have perhaps 6 hours before they arrive," Marcus told the Shadowvar. "Can the valley's defenses be activated in that time?" The ancient guardian's smile was both beautiful and terrifying. "My young student, you are about to learn that the Shadowvar built this place to last forever. The Federation is about to discover what happens when they threaten the guardians of ancient wisdom." Marcus felt his transformed consciousness expanding to interface with the valley's defensive systems. Hidden beneath the crystal formations were weapons and shields that operated on principles the Federation had never encountered. The Shadowvar had been much more than just skilled hunters. They had been master engineers and architects as well. The final confrontation was approaching, and Marcus found himself looking forward to it. For the first time since arriving in the Crystal Valley, he felt like he was fighting on equal terms. The Federation was about to learn that humans could be very dangerous when they found something worth protecting. The Federation battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace with overwhelming force. 50 warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons powered and shields raised. Admiral Corvex of the Zalarian High Command stood on the bridge of the flagship Galactic Dominion, studying the tactical displays with satisfaction. "Scan the planet's surface," he ordered. "Locate the assault team and prepare orbital bombardment coordinates for the Crystal Valley." His tactical officer worked at the scanning station for several minutes before reporting with confusion. "Sir, I am detecting massive energy readings from the valley, but no life signs from our assault teams." Admiral Corvex's crystalline features hardened with anger. The Shadow Stalker had somehow defeated his best hunters again. This time, he would make sure there were no survivors. "All ships, prepare for planetary bombardment," he commanded. "We will reduce that entire valley to molten rock." But before the fleet could fire, something unprecedented happened. A communication signal reached them from the planet's surface, broadcasting on all Federation frequencies simultaneously. "Federation Fleet, this is Marcus Chen, representative of the Shadowvar Guardians," the voice said calmly. "You are approaching a protected heritage site. Turn back now, or face the consequences of your actions." Admiral Corvex laughed harshly. "A human? Speaking for the creature? This grows more absurd by the moment." He opened a response channel. "Human, you have 30 seconds to surrender before we glass that valley from orbit. Your alien companion has murdered Federation citizens for the last time." Marcus's response came back immediately. "Admiral, your assault team is alive and well. They are currently learning the truth about this place, which is more than the Federation leadership has done in 3 centuries. The Admiral gestured to his weapons officer. "Charge the main guns." I grow tired of this conversation, but as the fleet's weapons powered up, the Crystal Valley began to glow with brilliant light, visible even from orbit. The energy readings spiked off their instruments as ancient Shadowvar defensive systems awakened for the first time in 300 years. "Sir," the tactical officer called out with alarm, "something is happening to our ships." Admiral Corvex looked at his status displays in disbelief. Throughout the fleet, critical systems were beginning to malfunction. Weapons powered down randomly, shields flickered and failed, and navigation systems showed impossible readings. "The entire valley is generating some kind of interference field," the science officer reported. "It is disrupting our technology at the quantum level." In the Crystal Valley, Marcus stood at the center of a vast control chamber that had risen from beneath the crystal formations. The memory crystals now pulsed with active energy, their stored knowledge flowing through systems that spanned the entire valley. The Shadowvar had built their defenses to be activated by consciousness rather than technology, making them immune to conventional countermeasures. "The fleet's weapons are disabled," Marcus reported to the Shadowvar, who was interfacing directly with the valley's ancient systems. "But they still have enough conventional firepower to destroy the surface installations." Then it is time they learned respect for their elders. the Shadivar replied with grim satisfaction. The ancient guardian gestured toward a particular crystal formation, and Marcus felt the valley's transportation system activate. In an instant, they were no longer standing in the underground control chamber. They had been teleported directly onto the bridge of Admiral Corvex's flagship. The bridge crew reacted with shock and terror as two figures materialized in their midst. Marcus, still recognizably human but somehow transformed into something more, stood beside the legendary Shadow Stalker that had haunted Federation nightmares for 3 centuries. "Admiral Corvex," Marcus said politely, "we need to talk." The Admiral drew his sidearm and fired directly at Marcus. The energy bolt passed harmlessly through his phase-shifted form and struck a bulkhead behind him. "As I was saying," Marcus continued calmly, "we need to discuss the future of galactic hunting policy." The Shadivar moved forward, its presence filling the bridge with an aura of barely contained power. "For 300 years, your people have sent hunters to my home seeking glory and trophies. None have asked why I fight so hard to protect one small valley." Admiral Corvex tried to activate his emergency beacon, but found that all the ship's systems had been gently disabled. "You are both under arrest for attacking Federation personnel and disrupting lawful military operations." Marcus smiled sadly. "Admiral, your assault team attacked us. We defended ourselves, and every member of that team is alive and unharmed, which is more mercy than the Federation has shown the Shadivar people over the centuries." "What are you talking about?" the Admiral demanded. "The creature is a rogue predator that has terrorized this sector for generations." The Shadivar stepped closer to the Admiral, its eyes glowing with ancient pain. "I am the last survivor of the species that taught your ancestors how to hunt properly." The Shadivar were the guardians of ecological balance, long before your civilizations learned to build starships. To demonstrate its point, the creature gestured toward the bridge's main display. Images began appearing on the screen. Ancient star maps, showing trade routes between worlds that had never been connected in Federation records, archaeological sites on dozens of planets that showed signs of Shadivar influence, and most damning of all, Federation historical archives that had been classified at the highest levels. "The Federation Council has known the truth for centuries," Marcus said as the evidence mounted on the displays. "They have deliberately suppressed the history of the Shadivar people, because their knowledge threatens the current power structure." Admiral Corvex stared at the historical records in growing horror. His own species' archives contained references to the teacher hunters who had guided them in their early development. The Federation had not discovered hunting. They had been taught it by a more ancient civilization. "Even if this is true," the Admiral said weakly, "it changes nothing. The creature has killed hundreds of Federation citizens. In self-defense," the Shadivar replied. "Every hunter who came to my valley sought to murder me and destroy the last remnant of my people's civilization. What would you have done in my place?" Marcus gestured toward another display, showing the Crystal Valley in all its hidden glory. The true scope of the Shadivar city became visible as scanning beams penetrated the camouflaged crystal formations. Miles of carved tunnels, vast libraries of memory crystals, and technological marvels that surpassed anything in current Federation science. "This is what your hunters have been trying to destroy," Marcus said. "Not a monster's lair, but the greatest repository of ecological and hunting knowledge in the known galaxy." The bridge crew stared in amazement at the revealed city. Even Admiral Corvex's hardened military mindset struggled to comprehend the implications of what he was seeing. "What do you want?" the Admiral asked finally. Marcus and the Shadivar exchanged a look through their mental link. "We want the Federation to acknowledge the truth about the Shadivar people and grant protected status to their heritage site. We want the knowledge in those crystals to be shared with species that can use it responsibly. And we want an end to the hunting of the galaxy's last Shadivar guardian." The Council will never agree to those terms," Admiral Corvex said. "Too many powerful interests benefit from the current system. Then perhaps it is time for those interests to face some consequences," Marcus replied. The Shadivar gestured again, and every ship in the Federation fleet found its weapons and shields completely disabled. The ancient guardian had interfaced with their technology and rendered them helpless with casual ease. This fleet represents a significant portion of the Federation's military strength, the Shadowvar observed. It would be unfortunate if it were to suffer catastrophic system failures while attempting to destroy a protected heritage site. Admiral Corvex realized that he was facing an opponent with technology far beyond Federation capabilities. The creature could have destroyed his entire fleet at any time but had chosen restraint instead. "What assurances do I have that you will not use this technology against Federation worlds?" he asked. Marcus stepped forward, his transformed appearance somehow managing to look both alien and deeply human. "You have the word of a human guardian, trained in the Shadowvar traditions. My people understand the concept of proportional response and defensive action." The Admiral studied Marcus with new interest. "You were just a hunter when you arrived here. What are you now?" "I am the first human Shadowvar," Marcus replied simply. "I have been given the knowledge and responsibility to protect what remains of an ancient civilization, and I take that responsibility very seriously." The Shadowvar moved to the bridge's communication station and activated the ship's transmission systems. "Admiral, contact your superiors. Tell them that the Shadow Stalker wishes to negotiate a formal treaty with the Federation Council." "A treaty?" Admiral Corvex was struggling to adjust to a situation completely outside his military training. What terms would such a treaty include? Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of history settling around him. "The establishment of the Shadowvar Valley as a neutral heritage site, the creation of an academy for teaching ecological balance and proper hunting techniques to any species that wants to learn, and most importantly, the recognition that some things are more valuable than political or economic dominance." The Admiral looked around his disabled bridge, considering his options. His fleet was helpless, his assault team had been converted to the enemy's cause, and he was facing opponents who could have killed him at any time, but had chosen dialogue instead. "I will relay your proposal to the Council," he said finally. "But I cannot guarantee their response." "We understand," Marcus replied. "But we hope they will choose wisdom over pride." The Shadowvar gestured once more, and Marcus found himself back in the Crystal Valley's control chamber. Around them, the ancient systems continued to pulse with quiet power, maintaining their protective field over the Federation fleet. "Do you think they will agree to our terms?" Marcus asked his teacher. The ancient guardian was silent for a moment, accessing probability calculations stored in the memory crystals. "The Federation Council will attempt to find a military solution first. They will call for reinforcements, consult with their weapons specialists, and probably try to develop countermeasures to our technology." Marcus nodded. "And when that fails, then they will have to choose between acknowledging the truth about the Shadowvar people or losing their credibility with their own citizens. The evidence we have shown cannot be suppressed forever." Over the following weeks, the standoff in the Kepler 442 system became the most significant diplomatic crisis in Federation history. News of the ancient Shadowvar civilization and the true nature of the Crystal Valley spread throughout the galaxy despite the Council's attempts at censorship. Species that had been taught Federation hunting doctrine for generations suddenly found themselves questioning everything they had been told. Archaeological expeditions to worlds mentioned in the Shadowvar records uncovered evidence of an advanced civilization that had guided galactic development for millions of years. The assault team members who had witnessed the truth became powerful advocates for change. The Vorthok hunter who had experienced the Shadowvar's memories traveled to his homeworld and shared his revelations with the pack leaders. The Nyx assassin became a teacher of dimensional combat techniques that incorporated Shadowvar philosophical principles, but the most significant development came from an unexpected source: Earth. When news of Marcus Chen's transformation reached human space, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Humanity's government officially recognized him as their ambassador to the Shadowvar people and declared Earth's support for the heritage site proposal. More importantly, human hunters and naturalists began arriving at the Crystal Valley in increasing numbers. They came not as conquerors but as students, eager to learn techniques that could help them better manage Earth's recovering ecosystems. The Federation Council found itself facing a choice: accept the new reality, or risk a war with opponents who possessed technology beyond their comprehension. The final negotiation took place in the Crystal Valley itself. Council representatives from a dozen species sat in the ancient Shadowvar amphitheater, surrounded by memory crystals that hummed with stored wisdom. Marcus served as translator and mediator, his unique nature allowing him to understand both the Federation's concerns and the Shaduvar's requirements. The Shaduvar propose a simple exchange, Marcus explained to the assembled diplomats. Access to their accumulated knowledge, in return for recognition of their heritage rights and protection of their sacred sites. Councillor Vrex of the Zalarian Republic studied the crystal formations with obvious greed. This knowledge could be worth fortunes. Why should the Federation share it freely? The Shaduvar's response was calm but firm. Because knowledge that is hoarded becomes corrupted. The techniques we offer are most effective when they are widely understood and properly applied. Marcus gestured toward displays showing ecological disasters on various Federation worlds. The current hunting and resource extraction policies have created environmental crises on dozens of planets. Shaduvar methods could restore balance to those ecosystems within decades. The negotiations continued for days, with each side carefully balancing their interests against the potential benefits of cooperation. But the outcome was never really in doubt. The Federation had too much to gain and too much to lose to refuse the offer. The Treaty of Kepler 442 established the Crystal Valley as a neutral heritage site under joint human-Shaduvar protection. The Federation agreed to fund an academy for teaching ecological balance and sustainable hunting practices to any species that wanted to learn. In return, the Shaduvar knowledge would be shared freely with all galactic civilizations, with the understanding that it would be used for the benefit of entire ecosystems rather than individual profit. Marcus found himself appointed as the first director of the Shaduvar Academy, a position that required him to balance his human heritage with his transformed nature. Students began arriving from across the galaxy. Young hunters seeking to learn ancient techniques, scientists studying ecosystem management, and philosophers exploring the deeper implications of guardianship. The Shaduvar itself seemed to flourish in its new role as teacher rather than defender. The ancient guardian worked with Marcus to develop curriculum that could adapt Shaduvar concepts to the needs of different species, while maintaining the essential principles of balance and respect. But perhaps the most satisfying development for Marcus was the arrival of his grandfather. Joseph Whitehawk stepped off the transport ship and looked around the Crystal Valley with the careful attention of a lifetime tracker. The old man's weathered face broke into a smile when he saw Marcus waiting for him. "Grandson," he said simply, "you have found your purpose." Marcus embraced his grandfather, feeling the familiar comfort of family connection. "I have so much to show you, grandfather. The Shaduvar techniques are similar to the old ways you taught me, but they work on scales I never imagined." Joseph nodded, studying Marcus's transformed appearance with acceptance rather than fear. "The spirits told me this would happen when you left Earth. You were meant to be a bridge between worlds." Together, they walked through the Crystal City as Marcus explained the Academy's goals and the knowledge contained in the memory crystals. Joseph listened with the patience of a man who had spent his life learning from the natural world. "The Federation species have forgotten how to be part of the ecosystem," Joseph observed. "They see themselves as separate from nature, rather than part of it." "That is what we are here to teach them," Marcus replied. The Shaduvar understood that hunters and prey, predators and guardians, are all part of the same system. When one part becomes too dominant, the entire system suffers. As the months passed, the Shaduvar Academy became a beacon of hope for species struggling with environmental collapse and resource depletion. The ancient hunting techniques proved incredibly effective at controlling overpopulation while protecting endangered species. The meditation practices helped soldiers and law enforcement officers develop better judgment and emotional control. Most importantly, the philosophical foundations of guardianship began to influence political decisions across the galaxy. Leaders who had once seen themselves as rulers started thinking like stewards responsible for the welfare of their entire populations. Marcus often stood in the Crystal Valley at sunset, watching new students arrive to begin their training. Some were seasoned hunters seeking to improve their skills. Others were scientists and philosophers trying to understand the deeper principles of ecological balance. All of them left changed by their experience with Shaduvar wisdom. The shadow stalker that had once terrorized Federation hunters had become the most respected teacher in the galaxy. The lonely guardian who had fought for centuries to protect the last remnant of their civilization, now watched with satisfaction as that knowledge spread to new worlds and new species. And Marcus Chen, the overlooked human hunter who had been sent to kill a legendary creature, had instead become the bridge between humanity's future and the galaxy's ancient past. "You have done well, my student," the Shadowvar said one evening as they watched the sunset paint the crystal formations with brilliant colors. "The old ways live again." Marcus smiled, feeling the deep satisfaction of a purpose fulfilled. "My grandfather always said that the best hunters are the ones who know when not to kill. I think he would be proud of what we have built here." The ancient guardian's eyes glowed with warmth and approval. "The greatest hunts are not about death, but about life. About finding what needs protection and having the courage to defend it." As the stars emerged in the alien sky above the Crystal Valley, Marcus felt the weight of his responsibilities settling comfortably around him. He was no longer just human, but he had not forgotten his humanity. He was no longer just a hunter, but he understood the true meaning of the hunt. He was a guardian now, protector of ancient wisdom and teacher of new hope. And for the first time since arriving in the Crystal Valley, Marcus Chen was exactly where he belonged. The Federation had sent him to kill a monster and claim a trophy. Instead, he had found a teacher, a purpose, and a way to change the galaxy for the better. It was, he reflected, probably the most successful hunt in human history.